Do you think that the government would just forego control of the economy? I feel like I wouldn't think that the United States would do that if Bitcoin got to the point of being used as a currency and being traded and kind of, it's not traceable, it can't be controlled.
Yeah, it's
And yet
it's
the
a good
government
question.
has only ever increased their control over time.
So I think the important point there is it's not a currency. Like a currency properly defined would be a medium of exchange that is deemed legal tender by the nation state. So if I give you $15, for 3 cups of coffee, it's tax free. It's a tax-free exchange. If I give you $15 of Bitcoin for that coffee, and if I bought the Bitcoin a year ago for $5, I just generated a $10 capital gain, and I owe $3 to the government in tax. So in fact, for me to pay you in Bitcoin cost me $18, not $15. And I generate 87 million accounting transactions, which will break your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a practical matter, currencies are established by nation states. And when a nation state deems the asset to be legal tender, they give a corporation or an individual the right to trade it tax-free. And that's a pretty big advantage. That's a big enough advantage that no company in the United States will ever, like no company will ever trade Bitcoin high speed to pay things or to pay bills, because with normal volatility, you can show mathematically that everything costs 20% more if you trade it and it's not legal tender, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's stupid, right? It's just, why would you pay 20% more for everything you buy and accept 20% less for everything you sell, right? So it's not a currency. And if you think of it as a currency, you invite all sorts of concerns and risks, like it doesn't fit with the accounting systems. The only way to trade it as a currency is not pay your taxes and not admit it, but then now you're a tax evader, right? So that takes you to a difficult place. If you just say it's capital, right? Money, medium exchange, store of value. Well, the store of value element of money is capital preservation. I'm keeping it's my savings account I'm going to hold for 30 years. Currency, checking account, I'm going to spend in this month, right? So if you think about it as capital, then, or as property, I bought a building. Did you intend to use it to buy coffee tomorrow with? No. You bought a building. Why'd you buy it? Because you wanted to store your capital. You thought it would double in value in 10 years. That's why you bought the building. It's an investment. So when you think of it as property or think of it as capital, then all of those concerns disappear. Now, if you look out at the future, companies, as long as they exist, will issue equity. If Apple and Facebook and Google exist, they're going to issue equity. Equity will not go away. Is it an investment? At a certain price, if you can buy the stock and it has a 22% dividend yield, it's a good investment. If it's too high, it's a bad investment. So there's a natural market clearing price where equity is an investment asset. How about property? People buy real estate, Airbnbs, buildings as an investment. Is it a good investment? If it has a 15% or 10% rent yield and it's going up 10% a year in value and it's a good desirable place, then it's a good investment. If the rent pays 2%, after tax and it's in a crappy place and it's not going to value, it's a bad investment. So real estate is a good or bad investment. So property will stay here. The city of New York, city of London or whatever, they will issue bonds. As long as there are municipalities and states and they can issue bonds and they can borrow money, or countries, they will issue bonds. Will you see sovereign debt, municipal debt, state debt? Sure you will. Is it a good investment? Not normally, but credit's not normally a good investment. If it paid 10, 15% interest, and if the currency wasn't collapsing, then it might be. But if it pays 10% interest and the currency is collapsing at 20% a year, it's not a good investment. But will they do it? Yeah. And who will buy it? The governments will buy it from themselves. Central banks will buy their own bonds. Institutional investors, regulated banks, regulated corporations, the state power company, they will buy municipal bonds because they're required to by their charter. And so that will circulate. Countries, the United States will issue the dollar. China will issue the CNY. The euro will issue the euro. How long will that go on? Until the nation states collapse. Where does it collapse? Well, half the countries in Africa don't have a currency. They use the CFA, the colonial franc, right? They literally don't have a functioning currency of their own, and El Salvador doesn't have a currency. So those countries will either dollarize, or they will use the CNY, or they'll use the EU, the euro, or they'll use the CFA. And so where does Bitcoin sit in all of this? It's an asset in a portfolio. It's it's global property. Everybody else doesn't have to fail for Bitcoin to succeed. Right? When we're preaching Bitcoin going to 100 trillion or 200 trillion, that doesn't mean you might not own a building. Is my beachfront property in Palm Beach a bad investment? Well, not necessarily. But there are certain assets that are quote unquote monetized. That is, people buy the asset just as a store of value over and above the utility value. Gold is an example. People that are buying gold as a store of value probably are, 70, 80% of the value of gold is monetary value, and the last part is utility value. One could think that over time, Bitcoin will demonetize gold. There's a scandal in Canada where people, the Chinese were coming. The narrative was the Chinese are coming into Canada, buying up all of our apartments and all of our houses and driving the price of housing up. Well, maybe also the Canadian government was printing a lot of money, driving up the price of housing too. And maybe corporations were buying up property because that was the best way for them to invest their shareholder capital because they had a lot of money. The problem with that is that the houses, tripled in value, but the wages of the people that want to live in the houses don't triple. And so if you triple the price of the house and if you double the interest rate, then the middle class, working class person can't buy a house. That's an example of monetizing a useful asset to the detriment of the society. What should happen is the people that were buying the houses as a store of value should sell that real estate, buy Bitcoin with it. The price of the houses will become more affordable. And then, 20-something starting their career can buy a house instead of living with their parents. The world is rationalizing when people don't irrationally buy assets in order to avoid losing their money, right? In the extreme, if I tell you all your money is worthless next Monday, you stampede to buy anything you can buy, and you monetize soap, and you monetize toilet paper, and you monetize, you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. It's like when I panic you monetize anything because you don't want to be holding worthless paper. Better to own food.
Yeah. But you know what? While we're on the topic, you have to ask yourself, what's the future going to hold for businesses? Because if you ask 9 different experts, you're going to get 10 different answers. Bull market, bear market, rates will fall, rates are going to rise a little bit. It'll be really helpful to have a crystal ball.
But until that happens, over 40,000 businesses have already future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. So basically, with just one unified business management suite, you have just one source of truth, giving you all of the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. And with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data.
When you're closing the books in days and not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. So whether you're earning millions or hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. And speaking of opportunity, right now you could download the CFO's Guide to Machine Learning and AI at netsuite.com/iced. Again, that's netsuite.com/iced with the link down below in the description. netsuite.com/iced. Thank you so much, NetSuite, for sponsoring this episode. And now let's get back to the podcast.